Hey guys, Joseph Baba Ifa here on the channel, connecting you to your destiny once again. Coming at you with a new video today on Egungun. And if you haven't had the chance, please go ahead and tap on that subscribe button. Egungun. Egungun is the Orisha of the ancestors, right? The Yorubas have a very strong ancestor cult because reverence and respect is a big part of their culture. I mean, every time you see your father or your mother, you basically have to hit the floor. Every time you're around an elder, you have to do a quick mofori bale. They're very big on respect of the living elders. So you can imagine how intense it is when we're talking about our ancestors, or the people who paved the way, who sacrificed to be able to allow us to have an existence here on earth, right? So Egungun is the Orisha, and he is an Orisha, of the ancestors. So when we look at the word Egungun, it actually translates into the word bone. So the best way to explain Egungun and how he's composed is like that of a human body. You know, within one structure of a human body, you have many bones, right? And no matter how singular they may be, they all compose a body. And I think that's the best way to explain the concept of Egungun, because Egungun as such is an Orisha. But when we're talking about what he's composed of all the ancestors ever. So, you know, we're talking about the bones. Each bone symbolically represents a different group of ancestors in general. I mean, you look at a human body, it has an infinite number of bones, and that's kind of how what Egungun is. He's the Orisha that is composed of all the ancestors ever, right? Makes a lot of sense why sometimes we use the word Egun and Egungun interchangeably, and the contracted word or form of the word Egungun or Egun to mean spirit. That's why sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, you have an Egun like this, this, and this. It is usually referring to a spirit, you know, and it's a contracted version of the word Egungun, which means bone. If you're a bone at that point, you know, you're more than likely in the spirit form because you've transitioned, and they're very interchangeable. There's a lot of play on words in Yoruba, so it's easy to get lost sometimes. So that's why we always like to clarify when it comes to terminology, because that's a big thing, being able to communicate. So Egungun is the Orisha composed of all the ancestors ever. So Egungun is an interesting character because he, in the Odu of Obeiwori or Obewanyi, they were both in heaven. And when I say both, I mean Egungun as well as his brother Oro, right? And they both went for divination to be able to arrive on earth. And Egungun, being a loving sibling, said, you know, let me go down first and make sure everything's okay, and then I'll come back and get you, and you know, that way we'll both fulfill our destinies simultaneously and together as we always planned here in heaven. Oro said, that's fine, I'll wait for you, not an issue. So when Egungun went down from heaven to earth, he was received and people liked him. He dressed a certain way. If you look at the Egun masquerade, it's these beautiful cloths, and you know, he danced a certain way, and people interact with Egun, and they love the way he danced, and he sang, and the children came to him and offered him you know, offerings. And Egun actually has a lot to do with children, because the whole goal of the cult or the society is to procreate, right? To be an ancestor, we have to have descendants. So it makes a lot of sense why the children went and offered to him and found him interesting and playful. You know, it's a really stark contrast to a lot of concepts you see in the Western world, where people are so afraid of death and the idea of transition that we kind of negate our ancestors or don't encourage our children to interact with them. Where the Yorubas are the complete opposite, you know, where they honor their ancestors and they speak of them. And, you know, it's the whole basis of our religion, because the Orishas are nothing more than deified Egun, right, or ancestors. So Egun was having a ball, and that's why even till this day the Egun festival, you know, is during the day, and everyone's able to attend, and you know, it really is a great time. You know, it's accessible to all because all have ancestors, and that's why a lot of ceremonies of Egun are actually done during the day. So, you know, however many days the Egun ceremony was, let's say presumably 9, right? Or 7 or a week or what have you, Oro was worried. He was in heaven worried about his brother. He's like, oh my God, I haven't heard from him. You know, I hope he's okay. You know, I can't take this anymore. I'm going down. And ironically, at the moment when Oro was descending upon earth, the sun was going down. And when he arrived, he saw his brother having a good old time, partying and, you know, having a good drink and dancing and all these other things. And Oro was infuriated. So, you know, he yelled out to Egun. He said, "Brother, what are you doing?" And Egun said, "Oh, my brother, I've been having such a great time. I forgot to come get you. Please join us." And Oro was so infuriated that he lunged at his brother to attack him. And Egungun realized what was happening and he went running into the house, right? And everyone was very scared of Oro, you know, so everybody went running. And they all went in the home, and Oro basically descended upon the town. And that's why till this day, the ceremonies of Oro are done at night. Not everybody's allowed to be outside, and Egun cannot be invoked at the same time as Oro because Obewenye says that they cannot be in the same place, right? So it shows a stark contrast. And even though we've come out with a video on Oro, it's another pataki that really shows the difference between the two cults, right, or the two fraternities. Or societies, because, you know, Egungun is it's unisex, it's for everybody. So when we look at this pataki and we interpret it, you see that the nature of Egungun. He was jovial, he was happy. It's about procreation, it's about life, it's about unity within a community, and these are all the things that really represent Egungun. And when we look at his icon, if the word Egungun means bone, you look at his icon and it's actually confectioned of the sticks of Atori, right? Which is in the Odio Yekumeji actually recognized as the oldest wood in the universe, at least you know, metaphysically, right? Or has the most spiritual connotations. And you know, there's certain things on the icon that you'll see as well, such as feathers of birds that have been identified as being the heads of the respective spiritual cults. One of them being the Agbe feather, one of them being the Aluko feather, and the other being the Ikode feather, which is, you know, the very recognizable African gray red parrot tail feather, right? And it's also wrapped in red cloth, which is a stark contrast because in the Afro-Cuban tradition, you know, the red cloth is usually shunned when it comes to the ceremonies of Egun. But, you know, my own interpretation of this is the reason the Egun icon, or even the majority of the Egun masquerades that you see in Nigeria are dressed in red, is because Egun is alive at that moment. And we're talking about the living spirit that, you know, flows in society and we interact with. And that's why usually the red cloth is not identified as being associated with death. But technically, Egun's not dead. He is our living ancestor. So I think that's why he gets away with his icon being dressed in red, or the masquerade being dressed in red, you know, when the red cloth is so shunned when it comes to, you know, burial rites and funeral rites and things like that, because he is alive. Egungun is actually the son of Oya, or a compilation of the sons of Oya. When we're talking about Egungun and we look at the ceremonies of Egungun, you know, he's known as Isang Egungun or Mesang Egungun, which is the 9 bones or the 9 spirits, which are actually, you know, the 9 staffs or sticks that compose the Egun icon represent each of the sons of Oya, who composed themselves in the youngest one, or the last one to come, which was Egungun, which is usually identified as the son of Shango and Oya. So Egungun is very, you know, linked with Oya. It's also why she has the title Oyansang, which means I am the mother of the 9, which are the 9 sons that compose Egungun, and who basically form the, I guess you can say, like the security guards of this border, of the border between this life and the next, or the marketplace as it's known, which is once again the place where Oya manifests. And if you look at Egungun and you look at the concept of it, you know, Egun, when he comes out in the masquerade and things like that, he'll hit the marketplace, he'll be in the village, he'll do all these things. These are all the spaces where he manifests. But usually identified as being the son of Oya and Shango. And it makes a lot of sense, once again, why he does dress in the red cloth, because it is a way for Shango to be able to identify his son, right? And it's really interesting because I interacted quite a bit with Epiridismo or Spiritism before being a Babalao, and I used to hear the old Spiritists, you know, speak of how, you know, they'd be in a misa and things like that, or a spiritual mass, and this negative spirit would come through, and, you know, there'd be like this big spiritual theater. And I'll never forget, one time I actually saw a spiritist mounted, speaking to someone who was mounted with the negative spirit, you know, the medium, and the good spirit threatening the negative spirit with burning him, right? And I really found this really odd because I'm like, you know, well, he's in spirit form, you know, combustion, I don't know how much it could take place there. But he was terrified to the point where he identified where he came from, you know, all these different things. And it made me realize when I started studying Egungun and the cult that, you know, Shango is the only one who is able to punish Egun or punish the spirits. That's why the flame or Shango's energy, you know, still causes fear to these energies because, you know, being draped in the red cloth and being associated and a part of the composition of Egungun, Shango still has domain over that. And that's why he's known as Oba Egun. And it's interesting because somebody could say, well, if Egungun has control over all the spirits and is composed of them, how do we have negative spirits? Well, it's like within a human body and we have all these Egunguns or bones, you might break a pinky toe. You know, it's not that the pinky toe was trying to hurt you. It's just that it's a result of whatever happened at that moment. And with a frustrated spirit, it could be a lack of elevation, funeral rites, offerings, etc. To the point where the Yoruba people even identify broken bones as being a symbol of someone having to attend to Egun or one of their spirits being out of line or out of frequency. So, you know, if you ever break a bone, God forbid, or, you know, something breaks in the house, usually it's a sign that Egun wants something, right? So very key there. Whenever we have a fracture or anything breaking in the house, it's very important to see if Egun wants anything at that moment, because that's usually how he gives signs when things break, because it means something's out of frequency and it causes a fissure or a breakage or a fracture. When we talk about Egungun, Egungun is a really important deity when it comes to the defense against witchcraft, right? Or Ogu or Abilu as it's known. And the reason being is because Egun is actually the deity that defends us when we sleep. You know, for those who have, you know, been involved in spiritism and have a little bit of a different angle of study, it is identified that, you know, the organic part of our body does have to rest, but the spiritual does not. So when someone is actually resting, you know, the spirit actually floats above them, you know, kind of watching and making sure everything's okay. And that's why you sometimes get these scenarios and dreams where you're fighting for your life and you're like, I'm asleep. Why is this? Because it's our spirit or our Egun actually defending us in moments when we're unconscious. So Egun, whenever someone feels spiritual pressure or that spiritual weight, that's usually the characteristics of somebody who would need a paradu or under a negative spiritual influence, like heavy joints, and being that the joints and the bones belong to Egun, you usually want to see what Egun wants at that moment, because it's him who is defending you and alerting you and giving you the inspirations that, you know, will allow you to protect yourself and your family. In Cuba, you see the tile, as it's known, or the teja. Really great innovation. You know, our ancestors, they never ceased to amaze me because they were so innovative and they were such survivors. They said, you know, we're not going to allow this cult to die. And they innovated the tile because the tile is actually made out of terracotta. And in Yoruba land, the dirt has a reddish hue. And being that they were being oppressed and they weren't able to practice their beliefs in the open, what they did was they basically brought the earth, or Egun, where it resides, or heaven, to them, to whether it be, you know, a certain part in the house where they had some privacy or in the barracks, and they would sacrifice to the tile to be able to offer. Now, the reason they did this is because, you know, in Yoruba land, when you want to feed Egun, usually your family members are actually buried on the compound, which has been passed down generation by generation. In Cuba, we weren't able to do that. As slaves, we weren't able to do that. So we innovated and brought, you know, the cemetery or the ground to wherever was most convenient and safe for us. And that's why we feed the terracotta tile, because it resembles the dirt in Africa, and also replaces having to go and actually feed the Egun or the bones of our ancestors, right? So really interesting stuff. The reason the Egungun icon did not really get a lot of attention in Cuba is because a lot of it didn't get over. The materials were difficult to find, whether it be the feathers, whether it be the sticks, you know, whether it be the manifestation of how they were being implemented. You know, it doesn't take away from the Egun cult that has persisted in Cuba for 500 years. But I do believe that if we have the opportunity to reintegrate certain things on both sides of the line, whether it be things that the Creole practice can offer to the Isheshe brothers or vice versa, I think it is key to make for a more fuller religion and spirituality, and also better results for the client. I do recommend that those who are interested in solidifying this link with their ancestors, which everybody should do, because if we don't build a link with the past, we really can't have a future. And that's why the Egungun icon, in my opinion, is so necessary by everyone that has a life and walks on this earth. It's very important for you to be able to consecrate your Isang Egungun icon. So, and maybe even incorporate the tile. There's no reason we need to lose our beliefs as we assimilate other aspects of our own beliefs, right? It is to be commended. But it definitely is one of those deities that everybody needs, amongst other ones that I've mentioned. Egungun is a beautiful deity. Beautiful songs, beautiful ceremonies. Me personally, it was the first thing I learned how to do, apart from Ebo and things like that. And it's something that came very natural to me. And, it really reiterates the influence that African and Yoruba culture had on Cuba and the Caribbean, because there is such this concept of respect to our elders and to our ancestors that, came from Africa and ultimately trickled down into us, the sons of the diaspora. So it really is beautiful to see this, this society and this concept and this cult continued, so that we can always pay homage to those who sacrificed so much to make sure the religion made it from Africa to Cuba, right? And they're so deserving of it, and their survival is to be commended. So that's Egungun, guys. Bunch of different information. There's always more, but we got a bunch in a nutshell. I mean, when we're talking about offerings even to Egungun, the number's 9 first and foremost, because it's the 9 sons of Oya. And, that's the number that really you're going to see vibrating a lot. Offerings to Egun, a big one is olele, or moi moi, which is a type of, what can I say? It's a type of tamal, as we would say, or like I guess a fritter, even though it's not fried. Very popular when offering to Egun, amongst a bunch of other offerings, because being the son of Oya, he had the blessing to be very well fed. And when we're talking about the marketplace, there was nothing that Egun was missing. So, he eats a wide array of things. And for those that are pretty strict about what Egun eats and doesn't eat, remember that this is all really contingent on your ancestry. So let's say you're Asian American, right? And you have certain cuisine that's, commonplace in the home there. You can offer that to Egun. It doesn't necessarily have to be African cuisine or Yoruba cuisine. Egun, honestly, should be offered to pretty much on a daily basis if you can. Whatever aspect of dinner you have, you're going to place that to Egun. I'll never forget, I was teaching one of a family member how to attend to Egun, and that day they had some Popeyes, and I said this would be a great first offering. Don't give too much, because I want to have some of the chicken too. But just an example, you can really provide whatever you're eating to Egun. Egun consumes everything, because when we're talking about our ancestors and all these different cultures, what hasn't been consumed? So Egun can be offered to. And when we're talking about material sacrifices, whether they be life sacrifices or food sacrifices, you want to put those to Egun, or the tile. You want to avoid putting that on the boeda per se, because that's more of like a meditative space, and we don't want that aspect of spirituality to come in contact with the lower level needs or the organic needs of food and things like that. In that aspect, we're trying to elevate those spiritualities, and whenever they need something a little more rustic, that's when we offer it to Egungun in the tile. So guys, that's Egungun. I'm sure it's going to spawn a bunch of questions. We sincerely appreciate the support. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Any questions you have, please. I'm sure this is going to lead to some follow-up videos. botanicacandlesandmore.com is up and running. Whether you're trying to get one of these beautiful shirts or a consultation with me, please feel free to go through there. It's quite convenient. If you want to speak to us, the phone number still is 407-440-2086. And sincerely from Joseph Baba Ifa and Botanica Candles and More, we want to thank you so much for watching this video on Egungun, and wishing nothing but blessings to you guys. And may the ancestors shed their light and look upon us with good eyes as we carry Ifa into the future. God bless you guys. Have a blessed evening. Take care.